All right, man, peace. So, brothers, the NFL is coming down to the stretch run, and there are many awards that still have to be determined. One of them being the NFL regular season MVP award. As of right now, in my view, Patrick Mahomes definitely has the lead in that race. Stephen A. Smith decided that he was going to have a segment on his show in regards to who he feels are the front runners for the NFL MVP award. And the guest in the segment is Mr. Louis Riddick, who normally does a very good job contributing to most of the NFL topics. Their conversation got a bit snippy, if I say so myself, and turned into a real debate. So, of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
You know what time it is? It's time for Stephen's A-List. Pay attention, Louis Riddick, because don't you dare refute me on this one. This is my top 5 league MVP candidates. Let's go to number 5 on the list. Your favorite player, Louis Riddick, Aaron Donald. Why? 16 and a half sacks, 33 hits despite double and triple teams. The man is the best defensive player in football right now.
Aaron Donald has been dominant. He's been the most dominant defensive tackle I've seen since Warren Sapp.
He's a candidate for league MVP because he's that real. No.
He's a candidate for league MVP, but he's not going to win. The only way that a player like Aaron Donald would ever win the NFL MVP award is if, number one, he broke the single season sack record. His team would have to go something like 14-2 or 15-1, and there would have to be no dominant quarterback having a transcendent season that year. Those 3 things would have to occur in combination with one another in order for Aaron Donald to even be seriously considered as the NFL MVP, because for the most part, the NFL MVP award has become the best quarterback of the year award.
Number 4 on the list, his teammate, Todd Gurley, that too, over 12.
And just getting back to Aaron Donald for a second, even when the league was more defensive, I believe that the last player to win the NFL MVP award who was a defensive player was Lawrence Taylor. If I'm wrong about that, one of you brothers can correct me. But once again, that only plays into the point that I put forth. Aaron Donald would have to have a truly historic season for him to win the NFL MVP award. He'd have to have like 25 sacks in a year.
1,200 yards rushing, averaging nearly 5 yards a carry, 15 touchdowns on the season. Didn't have a good week last week against Chicago, but you can give him a mulligan. These kind of things happen. Can't be perfect, just need to be great, and there is no question.
I like Todd Gurley. He reminds me a lot of Marshall Faulk and Thurman Thomas, except maybe a little bit faster than either one of those guys. The real question is whether or not his coach, Sean McVay, will ever allow him to be as great as he can be, because oftentimes offensive masterminds like McVay, they like to take the football out of their running backs' hands and put it into their quarterback's hands. That happened with LaDainian Tomlinson when Marty Schottenheimer left and was replaced by Norv Turner. Norv Turner just became this super pass-happy head coach. He was an example of an offensive coordinator who should have stayed that. He was not head coach material by any means. Also with the St. Louis Rams back in the day when they had the greatest show on turf when Mike Martz took over. That was pretty much the beginning of the end for that team because they stopped using Marshall Faulk as much as they should have running the football. Sometimes when you have a running back who catches the football very well out of the backfield like Marshall Faulk or Thurman Thomas or Todd Gurley, the head coach becomes too enamored with using them as a pass catcher as opposed to using them as a runner. When you have a great running back, that's like a boxer who has a great body attack. You wear your opponent down over the course of the game. Some of these games that the Rams have lost, they lost because they decided to not use Todd Gurley as a running back. Now, I'm not sure if he's hurt or not. Maybe he's hurt, and I just don't know about it. But they need to go back to dedicating themselves to the running game, especially with Cooper Kupp no longer being able to play for them for the rest of the year.
He's great. Let's go to number 3 on the list, please. Give it to me. Phillip Rivers, your boy Louis Riddick. What?
Phillip Rivers is becoming the AFC version of Drew Brees. He's becoming the feel-good story of the NFL season. Patrick Mahomes is probably going to have to throw for somewhere around 50 touchdowns to cement the NFL MVP award because the media is trying to really push for Phillip Rivers and also for Drew Brees, of course. Phillip Rivers, in my view, is one of the most overrated quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. He's very talented, but this guy throws so many interceptions. The NFL has really pulled back on the defense. They don't allow cornerbacks and safeties to be as physical with receivers as they did in the past. So, of course, Phillip Rivers is not throwing quite as many interceptions as he used to throw. Even Eli Manning is not throwing quite as many interceptions as he used to throw. That's how you know the defense is not allowed to do anything. I think that Phillip Rivers is a bit of fool's gold. Once again, he's a nice quarterback, but the guy has missed the playoffs 7 out of the last 8 seasons. And they talk about him like he's Dan Marino.
Why? 69% of completion of his passes. We see what the San Diego Chargers are doing. We know, as Max Kellerman always says, Phillip Rivers is due. Missed the playoffs 7 of the last 8 years, but we're going to ignore all of that because he's been balling this year. Deserves all the credit in the world. No.
Well, I'm sorry, Stephen A. Smith. I cannot ignore that. I can't ignore you being a so-called great quarterback and you've missed the playoffs 7 out of the last 8 years. Sorry, sir. No bueno.
Number 2 on the list, Drew Brees, the New Orleans Saints. Why? 75% of his passes completed. Only 4 interceptions on the season. I don't like the fact that he's only thrown for 328 yards combined over the last 2 games.
Right, but what does that tell you about Drew Brees and what Sean Payton sees in Drew Brees? It's very similar to what Belichick sees in Tom Brady. They're going to have less responsibilities as a quarterback, as a thrower. They're going to try to rest them over the course of the season, utilize the running game more and the short passing attack, and hope that they have something left in the gas tank by the playoffs. Drew is still great, don't get it twisted, especially at home. But on the road, you can get him. You definitely can get him, especially in a big spot if the defense is allowed to be more physical, as they often are in the playoffs. Fortunately for New Orleans, it looks like they're going to have home field throughout the playoffs, but we'll see.
That sits there and dips him a little bit, but he's still great. He's Drew Brees. They've been winning. All's forgiven if he handles his business. Number 1 on the list, Patrick Mahomes. He's the leader right now, ladies.
To me, it's not even close. At one point, I had Jared Goff as a dark horse, but he's fallen off so much in the last 3 games, there's no way that he can win it. So he's done. I like Stephen A's list, though. It's pretty good. And I agree with the order.
Ladies and gentlemen, 45 touchdowns on the season. He's been absolutely surreal, even when he's been suspect. He never has had the kind of game this season that Drew Brees had against the Dallas Cowboys. Those are my top 5 lists for league MVP as we speak right now. Louis Riddick, what the hell do you have to say about that?
Well, first of all, Aaron Donald's too low. He needs to be at 3. And bump everybody else down, and we're good to go.
Bump everybody else down?
No. Put him at 3, bump Phillip down and Todd down. We're good to go.
I can kind of sort of see that, but I prefer to have Aaron at 5, especially since the defense has been so bad. Even their run defense has been so bad. So when you're a defensive tackle and the run defense is that bad, that tells me that your mindset is all about getting sacks. Now, he also leads the NFL and tackles behind the line of scrimmage. So, of course, that means he's tackling running backs as well. But where are you when they need you to stop the running backs for 1 and 2 yard gains? It's very obvious that his mindset is more on rushing the passer. So I think that he's properly where he should be, at about the 5th spot.
I don't know about that. I mean, I'm very shocked that you would say that about Phillip Rivers.
I like Phillip. He just moves the 4. What Aaron is doing is historic. It's unprecedented.
And what's Phillip Rivers doing? Team top liver?
Unprecedented.
What Phillip Rivers is doing is not historic, though.
What he's doing at the position that he's playing at.
Okay, that's why he's a top 5 list.
Okay, well, that's why.
But the Rams defense ain't all that impressive.
He needs to be. He can't play every position.
I understand all of that.
Right, but the question, Louis Riddick, is Aaron Donald doing his job overall when it comes to stopping the run? Because we know that with great defenses, if they are stopping the run, it's normally because they're getting exemplary play from their inside defensive linemen, also their middle linebacker or their inside linebackers.
But it's about impact, too.
He doesn't. Put him at 3.
Okay, I'm not putting him at 3. I'm not doing it.
We're good to go,
I would say this, Stephen A.
Yes, go ahead,
Stephen A, the list is quite good. Every now and then, as Stephen A says, even a dead clock is right twice a day.
That's a good list.
But I would offer, and by the way, I agree with it, but I would offer you 2 more names just to throw it out there. I think Jared Goff is right there.
Jared Goff was right there, but he's had too many bad games in a row. And I like Jared Goff. I like how he throws the football. But it's very clear that ever since Cooper Kupp went down, that Jared Goff has had some issues connecting with his receivers. I think that if you're Sean McVay, you should spend some time investing in bringing in some bigger targets for Jared Goff. Maybe a tight end. Go to some more conventional offensive sets. Try to make their offense a little bit more physical and less glam.
If he finishes strong and one or two of these guys falters, he could work himself back into position. And just keep in mind where everyone was on Drew Brees. First Mahomes had it locked up. Then Khalil Mack. Then Khalil Mack got hurt. Then Drew Brees had it locked up, right? It's not locked up. It's still up for grabs. Phillip Rivers could still win it. Maybe so too could Jared Goff, although you would.
Phillip Rivers would have to have an unbelievable last 2 or 3 games of the season in order for him to truly say that he has a chance to be an MVP. I think that it's pretty much over as long as Patrick Mahomes does not spit the bit and have like 7 interceptions in his last 2 games.
You would think that vote would be split up on that team. And I'll give you one more name. He's not on anyone's radar because of his marginal utility. This team could stink with him or without him. Saquon Barkley. Saquon
This guy's on something.
Barkley has kept the Giants any game
because the season.
I understand because
Even Molly Karam, who's a Giants fan, is looking at Max Kellerman with disgust. Max Kellerman is such a damn fanboy. It's so pathetic.
because of the season they're having, but they would have no wins without Saquon Barkley.
So what does that really mean? That means that he should not be considered the MVP. How could you be the most valuable player in the NFL and your team is nowhere near 500? As you stated, if he was not there, they'd have probably 2 or 3 less wins. They would just be a little bit more terrible than they already are.
So how many wins is a guy? I know those wins aren't
Giants
important because the team stinks.
I don't care how good they are.
I'm just if we talk about MVP being the best player, Lewis, this includes Todd Gurley. Saquon Barkley's the best running back in football.
Well, I'll give Max Kellerman this. He's always been consistent in stating that, in his view, MVP equates to the best player. I disagree. I think that MVP equates to the best player on the best team if he's having a transcendent season.
In football right now, and there's room for improvement. That's the scary thing.
Yeah, if we're talking about the very best player, look, Aaron Donald may have to be at the top of that list. If we're talking about just the very single best player at his position.
I agree with that. And once again, that's why I consider him in that top 5. But as a defensive player in this era, how impactful actually is he, especially since their defense is so bad? But he's definitely in consideration. Right now, Patrick Mahomes, in order for him to cement the MVP award, he's going to have to win at least one of the last 2 games. And, his stats are going to have to be somewhere around 8 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns, and no more than 2 interceptions.
Regardless of position, at his position, it would have to be Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald is doing things. I'm telling you, look, the Rams do not beat the Chiefs if it's not for Aaron Donald. They don't beat.
I agree with that. What I see, though, is that the Saints, the Chiefs, the Rams are all going to end the season around the same record, 13-3, 14-2, maybe 12-4. So we're going to have to evaluate not only who's had the greatest impact for their particular team, but also their position, because the NFL is so position dependent. There's a hierarchy in the NFL predicated on position, and we know that the quarterback is the most important position in all of American team sports.
They don't beat them. I don't care what Jared Goff did that game. I don't care what anybody else did that game. As well as Patrick played in that game, which, some late turnovers were a bit of a problem. Aaron Donald is the best player in the league right now.
You guys think Patrick should be ahead of Drew Brees?
Yes.
You know what? I'll say this. I'm big on context, and the context is this. Understand that he's doing that as a first-year starter.
Okay.
A first-year starter.
A first-year starter, and all you hear about is how great the offensive talent is around Patrick Mahomes. That's the same talent that Alex Smith had last season. What did he do with it? Patrick Mahomes comes in and basically turns a Hyundai into a Maserati. That's what he did. Now all of a sudden, Tyreek Hill is looking like the second coming of Jerry Rice or somebody like that. Their tight end is now firmly being recognized as the best tight end in the NFL. These are just things that he's been doing. They're really going to need Sammy Watkins to step up, especially going into the playoffs, though. Because Tyreek Hill, even though he's mercurial, he's spectacular, he's so small. You need a bigger receiver to kind of take a lot of the onus off of Tyreek Hill to make big plays. They're going to need Sammy Watkins to step up. But without a doubt, Patrick Mahomes is the MVP of this season.
He is doing things and setting records right now that people just have not seen. And the style of play, look, that has something to do with it, right? The aesthetics of the game have something to do with it. And what you see him do, you may never see another quarterback do.
In other words, he has swag, and he does have that.
Ever.
Listen.
Yeah,
I'm looking at the Kansas City. I'm looking at the Kansas City Chiefs. Do y'all realize there isn't a single game this year where they've scored less than 26 points?
Yeah.
That's
The offense is pretty good.
I agree. That does say it all.
This is not a single game in the 13, 14 games that they play. In 14 games, they have not scored less than 26 points.
He's fast too. How about some of the throws he makes in extended
I mean, come on.
play? He's
Look,
insane.
come on.
He's so fun to watch. He's
Yeah.
the
Could
most
you
fun
imagine? Could you
quarterback to
imagine
watch
being?
for sure.
Imagine trying to defend him where you can do every single thing right, and you can scheme it right, and even have great athletes doing it and guess right down the line, and Mahomes can make it come out wrong for you. It must be the most
saw that
frustrating
last
thing in
night.
the world. There's nothing you can do.
We saw that.
Well, that's why I liken him unto John Elway or Brett Favre back when they had Mike Holmgren as the coach.
The Saints scored 41 week and 10 another.
Right.
Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs offense has never scored less than 26 points in a game.
And why did the Saints?
There's nothing you
Why
do.
did that happen to the Saints?
Dallas Cowboys defense.
What did you say? Defense?
Defense.
Yeah. Okay. This is a different segment.
And
but-
Dallas.
It's a
In
different-
Dallas.
It's a different segment.
It wouldn't have happened if they went to New
Different segment,
Orleans, which is where Chicago's going to have to go.
It's a different segment.
Okay, I hear you
It
talking.
happened because of defense.
Are you talking?
Let me say this very quickly. I could see Chicago defeating the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans. I could see that. As a matter of fact, they're probably the only team that I could see defeating New Orleans in New Orleans. Maybe other than the Dallas Cowboys, if they give an A-plus effort on both offense and defense, I could see that because the New Orleans Saints offense is not that explosive. It's just they're very technical. They're very technically sound, and they execute on a very high level because of their quarterback, Drew Brees. But they don't have explosive wideouts. They have a very good running game, but that can be bottled up. And as we all know, when you put that heavy pass rush on Drew, who's only about 5'11", 5'10 and a half, 5'11", you can get him to throw picks.
Talking.
Because of the players.
Remember
playing
last year we
defense.
talked about that. We talked about it last year.
And that's why the Chicago Bears are going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Because of defense.
Just saying. You know what would be a great list too? Have you done your list for Coach of the Year?
No.
That would be a great list. As of right now, the coach of the year, in my view, is that coach for the Chicago Bears, Matt Nagy.
No.
That will be a good one too.
Yes.
Because there's not a whole bunch of statistics that we can sit here and just drool
That's right.
over.
Yeah.
We got to actually talk about it.
That's right.
I'm looking
I like
forward to
it.
that.
Look,
Can I
you
be
should
back?
put it on your
Can I be
producer
back?
hat
Can I come
today,
back
too.
from that?
In other words, Louis Riddick is setting shots to Stephen A. Smith. He's letting him know you're not going to be able to fake the funk on a conversation like that, Stephen A. Smith. You're going to actually have to know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
We can come back from
Can I
that
come
one.
back
I'm a little suspect with you and the coaches though, because you know too many of them personally. You understand? You know
But
too
you know
many
what?
of them.
That's Stephen A. Smith's way of saying, Louis Riddick, I see what you did there. I see what you're trying to say there. And if you think that you're going to create a conversation piece to make me look stupid, I'm not going to allow that.
Them personally.
What, you
so
want
because
my-
of that,
what, you want my input on that?
no, I said
give
the
some
input, sure, but what I'm just saying is that you
I may be able to hit you a few of them Buster Douglas shots on that.
There
on
we
that
go.
list,
All
though.
right, okay. You'd be surprised who I picked. You'd be surprised who I picked, though. You'd be surprised. And it wouldn't be
It'll be
Belichick.
fun, though.
And it wouldn't be Belichick.
It'd be fun, though.
It wouldn't be
we'll
Belichick.
deliver that for you, Lewis. If you want to do a list one day, you could do a list too.
Yeah, all right, I might do that.
All right, you
I
can
like
you can
that.
marinate
I
on.
like,
As usual, Molly Karam, Punk, and Stephen A. Smith.
I like that.
We'll
All
leave
right.
it there. All right, Lewis, thanks for
Molly,
making
you're
with us
better
a lot of
producer.
fun.
Go ahead, girl. Go ahead, man.
I have
See, you said Molly Karam, executive producer. Go ahead.
people in my ear. I'm not calling the shots. The Cowboys are the hot.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. We'll see who ends up winning the NFL MVP award. I do believe that it's going to be Patrick Mahomes, but we'll see. So peace.